Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of a Shabbat learning session with TBA Rabbinic Intern Ben Sigal.
So I just want to start with an intro conversation. I'm sure you saw, well, I'm not sure you saw anything because no one reads emails, but for those of you who did read the Shabbat bulletin, my title has all to do with Thanksgiving, and I want to talk about that. In full transparency and honesty, part of it is because I'm talking about the Parsha that we just read 4 times, or 3 other times in the next week, and I wanted to teach something different. But also because I think it's notable and interesting to talk about Thanksgiving, especially in the entire environment that we are in right now, both as Jews in America, trying to grapple with what is going on in Israel, trying to grapple with what it means to be Jews in America. I think there's a lot there to talk about. So before we get started, I just want to get a sense of places where people know offhand that we express gratitude as a part of our prayers. What? When you eat, great. So we say we have prayers to show gratitude when we eat, both with all the different brachot that we say before we eat, as well as Birkat Hamazon and Bracha Achrona. There are plenty of different ways of expressing gratitude to God for the fact that we have food in front of us. Other thoughts? In the morning? Modeh Ani, wonderful. So we start out our morning, and this is one of the texts that we'll get into. We start out our morning, the first thing we're supposed to say is words of gratitude. So much so that the first word we say is not Ani Modeh, but Modeh Ani, that the first word is gratitude, and only then we express who's expressing it. Yeah, Joey?
Asher Yatzar, after you go to the restroom.
Asher Yatzar, wonderful. A prayer that we say after going to the restroom, it's also baked into the morning prayers with an understanding, among other things, that we probably, before we leave home in the morning, we're going to have to use the restroom as well. But it's a prayer that we're not going to get into it, so I'll just say a little bit more. It's a prayer that expresses gratitude for the fact that our bodies are working, and the fact that even one thing not working with our bodies could be wholly detrimental to our ability to survive. Our bodies are very complicated things, and we're expressing gratitude to God that they are working as they should in allowing us to take in nutrients and pass out what we don't need. Other thoughts? Be'ahavta. The whole Shema is sort of this loving kindness that we're expressing towards God, and that's coming out of gratitude. Other ideas? Pretty big list already. Birkot HaShachar, the first prayers that we say, at least in this minyan here, are all different prayers expressing gratitude for different things. Judaism is a religion of gratitude, among many other things. And so I want to dive into a couple of those things, because one of the fun things that we'll get into is that one of the words that we use for gratitude in Hebrew, Hodu, also has another meaning, in modern Hebrew at least, which is turkey. So these two things are, just as they are linked together in the American tradition, there's also a nice little Hebrew linkage. And going into Thanksgiving, I think it's important that we ground our gratitude not just as Americans who are grateful for all the different things that we get to experience here in America, but as Jews who can be grateful for all sorts of different things as well. Yeah, I'm going to pass these out, but go ahead. Great. So we're going to go through a couple of different prayers that are a part of regular liturgy, some that we talked about, some that we didn't, and just kind of dive into them and explore where this gratitude comes from, and many different ways that we can go about expressing it. But the common thread with all of these are a basis of gratitude that we get to live life, really. So the first prayer, like I mentioned, is the prayer that we say every morning as we wake up. Moda ani lefanecha melchai v'kayam shechazarta binishmati b'chemla rabba emunatecha. I give thanks to you, living and everlasting sovereign, for you have restored my soul with mercy. Great is your faithfulness. So what understanding of gratitude do you get from this? Where is this gratitude coming from? That you woke up. That you get to see another day. Yeah, it's very easy when one's life is plenty of mornings waking up to take that for granted. And the first thing that our tradition tells us to do when we wake up every morning is not take it for granted. Because as we were talking about earlier today in the Lunch and Learn, there will be a day at some point for all of us where that isn't the case. God willing, it will be far into the future for all of us. But we're very aware of the fact that we don't get to live forever. And so taking a moment to start our days off in gratitude that, hey, we get another day is huge. There's an understanding that's built within this. Shehechazarta binishmati, that our soul is being returned to us every day. There's an understanding in Judaism that our soul is given to God every night when we go to bed, and then it's returned to us in the morning. That there are some texts that talk about, I forget what the exact fraction is, but that sleep is like 1/30th or 1/60th a death. And that's because our soul is leaving us when we go to bed. And when we wake up, it's being returned to us. So there's a real sense of we've survived that. It's a real ordeal that we've survived. So this is just like starting out the day. The next text that I want to dive into, Psalm 136. This is one of the ones that we sing a lot here. It's a part of the Shabbat morning liturgy. We sing it as a part of the additions to Birkot HaShachar in the morning, right before, it's a couple of Psalms before we say Ashrei. And it starts out with this idea of Hodu l'Adonai ki tov ki lo chasto, praise God, for he is good, God's steadfast love is eternal. And this idea of ki le'olam chasto, God's steadfast love is eternal, repeats time and time and time again after each thing that we thank God for. Praise the God of gods, God's steadfast love is eternal. Praise the Lord of lords, God's steadfast love is eternal. And then it goes into all these different things that God does for us, who alone works great marvels, who made the heavens with wisdom, who spread the earth over the water, who made the great lights, the sun to dominate the day, the moon and the stars to dominate the night, who struck Egypt through their firstborn, and brought Israel out of their midst with a strong hand and outstretched arm, who split apart the sea of reeds, and made Israel pass through it, who hurled Pharaoh and his army into the sea of reeds, who led his people through the wilderness, who struck down great kings and slew mighty kings, Sichon, king of the Amorites, Og, king of Bashan, and gave their land as a heritage to God's servant Israel, who took note of us in our degradation and rescued us from our enemies, who gives food to all flesh. Praise the God of heaven, God's steadfast love is eternal. And between each line that I said, we normally say Kilam Chasto, God's steadfast love is eternal, but for the sake of time, I didn't say it as we were reading through this. What do we get out of this understanding of gratitude? It's a slightly different one.
I guess God lives forever.
So there's a sense that God is eternal,
Right.
And as a result of that, God's ability to be a source of gratitude for us is eternal as well.
Right.
That there are plenty of people in our life who we're grateful for, and they may come in and out of our lives, but God has the ability to be there for us as a recipient of our gratitude forever. Yeah, great. Other thoughts? God's watching out for us. There's all these different things that God is doing for us. It's a gratitude that comes out of an understanding that it's not just gratitude for God's existence, but a gratitude of thanks. Thank you for all these different things you've done for us. And as a result, we're going to express this gratitude for each and every individual thing. Yeah.
God is also there for healing.
Yeah, there's a sense that God is going to right the wrongs in the world. If we look through this, we start with creation and we make it all the way to redemption, to the Jewish people making it into the land of Israel. And that's coming out of a sense of slowly righting the wrongs, right? That it's not that we were slaves in Egypt and it's not like the next day we were free in the land of Israel, but that to paraphrase a quote from Martin Luther King Jr., that the arc of history bends towards justice, and that justice is coming from God and from God's acts. Yeah, to repeat the quote, I'm paraphrasing it because I don't remember it exactly, but that the arc of history bends towards justice. And what's going on here is that the text is saying, yes, that's true, and also it's because of God's intervening in the world. Other thoughts on what might be similar between this gratitude and the gratitude we saw in Modat Ani? Yeah. So so immediately after Modat Ani, we also, not immediately after, but fairly quickly after we say it, we start listing gratitude for all different things. That the rooster can wake us up in the morning, that God has the ability to give sight to the blind, that we're clothed, that we're free, that we found strength in the morning to actually get up. All these different things are expressed in those prayers after Modat Ani, which are linked through the Siddur at least. And this is also a very sequential list of things. Great. So I want to take a little bit of a turn with the text that we're going to look at next. It's from Brachot, but it's related again to something that we're going to see in liturgy. So Rav Yehuda said that Rob said, "Four must offer thanks to God with a thanks offering and a special blessing. They are seafarers, those who walk in the desert, and one who was ill and recovered, and one who was incarcerated in prison and went out." And all of these appear in the verse of a psalm, which I didn't include here, but I promise you it's a proper proof text. This idea that, so why would it be that these people in particular would have to offer thanks to God with a special blessing?
They're heavily at risk. They're heavily at risk.
Yeah, they're heavily at risk. Yeah, they have not had, they have put their hands into God to a certain extent. And as a result of it, they're supposed to show gratitude that God pulled them out of these risky situations and let them continue on living. So these lists have been updated into the modern day. Certainly all of these people would be included, but I know of people saying that I know in some communities, they will say every time you go on a flight, you should be saying this prayer, which we're going to see in a second is Birkat HaGomel, which frankly, I would love to hear more often. Not because I want there to be more opportunities for people to say it, chas v'shalom, but because we are so often in situations where this is the case, and we don't necessarily express our gratitude afterwards that we made it out of those situations. So, yeah. So it's very common for people to say Birkat HaGomel, in particular when they go, when they make a trip to Israel, when they come back to say Birkat HaGomel. But there are some who will say it after every flight they take, saying that being on a plane is akin to being a seafarer. The reason that we see it most commonly said in our congregation is because of someone who is ill and recovered. And this relates to all sorts of illness as well. So it can be like life-threatening illness, but another one that's very common is after childbirth. It's considered commonplace for a woman to say Birkat HaGomel after the fact, because even though thankfully today it is not nearly as risky as it once was, it's still a risky thing. It's still that we still see people experience all sorts of complications from it. And so as a result of that risk that is inherent within it, even though modern medicine has pulled some of that out of it, it gives us pause. And so as a result, we're able to use that as an opportunity for people to say it. Right. So they didn't have cars back then, but that would also be, so what was shared is what about car accidents? And that would also be, to a certain extent, going into this category of one who is ill, because there's the opportunity for mortal injury in a car accident. And even if that isn't the case, I know that's one of the other examples where I see it very commonplace in congregations for one who's been in a car accident to say Birkat HaGomel as a result. So on the next page, I've included it. This is what it has at the beginning is basically this is out of a Siddur, but what it has at the beginning is there just to show you that there are some Siddurim that include it. The important thing that I wanted to add here, right before the blessing in the bold, it says it is proper not to delay the recital of the blessing for more than 3 days. So we have a little bit of wiggle room, but there's an idea that in expressing this gratitude, it's not right for us to delay the expression of gratitude, that we've been saved. And if we go about it willy-nilly waiting 3 days, more than 3 days, a bunch of different things could happen. Anyone think of some reasons why it would be worthwhile for us to not delay saying this? What? Yeah, why would it be important to not delay saying Birkat HaGomel?
Well, first of all,
Right, yeah, so you wait until someone's returned from the trip, but why would it be important once you get back from that trip, or once you've found dry land again after seafaring, or after you've actually survived, which can be a little bit of a gray area? Why would it be important? Yeah, Gary. We have a tendency to forget, yeah. If we wait around forever, it may never happen, and we may forget about that gratitude, right? I know I've been in a car accident before, and I know I was really shaken up afterwards. And slowly years have gone by, and I'm not as shaken up. And I unfortunately have to say that I'm not, for plenty of different reasons, I'm probably not as grateful today for the fact that I survived that car accident than I was the day that I actually survived it. And that's just a reality of life. Yeah, Taibo?
I wanted to say, at least in my experience as someone who's had to say it all too often, and also family members, part of what ritual can do is help with the transition. So in the case, it was actually a family member who needed to be home a long time after surgery and then going back to school. The family member was anxious about the transition. So the Shabbos before he went back to school, he did Gomel, and that was part of helping to mark a transition, that this is over and it's now okay. Do you know what I'm saying? It's not just the being grateful. It's a good ritual will help you move through that liminal moment to a new thing. So that's what Gomel can do too.
Yeah, absolutely. A sense of reframing a mindset of saying, this was the place I was in. I was in a risky place, and I'm no longer in that risky place. There's gratitude inherent in the prayer and in what it says, but it does also help with that transition. There's a lot of mental energy that needs to be expended to be able to go from one thought process to another. Yeah, there is a potential for risk every day, but what our tradition says is to a certain extent, there's an inherent risk of there's an inherent risk every day we live, right? As going back to what we said with Modeh Ani, we know one day we won't be able to wake up and say Modeh Ani. And so there's certain prayers that we say as expressing our gratitude and just generally for the fact that we get to live. But then there are specific prayers that we should say when we've lived through experiences that are a lot less common to live through. That's really what this prayer is getting at. So I want to dive into it so that we can discuss it for a few minutes so that we can end Shabbat when on time, assuming Mashiach does not come in the next 20-something minutes. So the prayer here is, it's in the bold. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, King of the universe, who bestows goodness upon the guilty, who has bestowed every goodness upon me. And then the congregation responds to that. The one who has bestowed goodness upon you, may that one bestow every goodness upon you forever. So what's the prayer's understanding of gratitude in this case then?
You should always be grateful.
That you should always be grateful. Yeah.
Always be grateful about your health.
Yeah, that the fact that we've survived this thing shouldn't stay with us in the past. A sense that we have continued on, and that gratitude should stay with us forever. Yeah. Other thoughts? Upon the guilty. Interesting. So it's one translation, by the way, that I decided to go with because I wanted someone to ask that question. So the Hebrew word is chayavim. It's the one who is obliged in something. And one of the ways that the tradition can use this is an understanding that you may have, it gets into this idea of God intervened in this moment to a certain extent. That whatever was about to happen in terms of you not making it, somehow God intervened and now you made it as a result. So it's not necessarily guilty as in like you did something wrong, but as in you were on track for this bad thing to happen to you, and for whatever reason, that didn't happen. Yeah, for sure. But I want to refocus. Yeah, I want to refocus though. Where does this gratitude come out of in this prayer? Or like, let me refocus in a different direction actually. Why is there congregational involvement in this? We have all these different prayers which we can say in a congregation, right? But most of us are not waking up surrounded by a minion's worth of people, and yet we say Modeh Ani. All these different prayers that we've gone through thus far, we don't need a minyan for. But this one thing we're supposed to say with other people. Not only that, we normally say it as a part of Torah service. So what's so important about saying this in community? Yeah, there's a sense of gratitude from the community that we still have this community member with us. Were you going to share? Oh, okay. Yeah, gratitude for the other people in our lives as well. After someone has been through a scary incident like this, to not just be able to express gratitude to God that they made it through the incident, but to see their community expressing gratitude to God that they've made it through that incident as well, as a way of the community saying, we're grateful for you as well, right? It's not just gratitude for God, it's gratitude that this person is still in our community. And that in those moments that are potentially near-death experiences, being able to not feel lonely in that moment is huge. To not have to sit in that moment by yourself can be really helpful in terms of, like Tybal was talking about, transitioning through the moment into whatever comes next, whatever life is ahead, because the scary situation is no more. So it can be recited at any Torah service. So it's not something. Ideally, in a situation, the community will know and will automatically give an aliyah to that person. so that they can come up to the Torah and say it. But if the community doesn't know for whatever reason, then proactively requesting and saying, hey, before Torah service ever starts, whoever the Gabbai is who's overseeing giving out Aliyot, saying, hey, I want to say Gomel, allows the service to know, whoever's running the service to know, hey, this person wants to say Gomel, we should set aside that ability and make sure that we don't run past Torah service without giving them the experience. Great question. As we turn into this Thanksgiving, there's a lot of different ways we could have talked about Thanksgiving in Judaism. There's all sorts of different texts about rabbis discussing whether or not it's okay to celebrate. Short answer is yes. But I wanted to talk about gratitude because it's so ingrained in our tradition, and because this link between gratitude and Judaism and gratitude and Thanksgiving is something that we really need to hold with us right now at this time where there's so much that we aren't able to be quite as grateful for. Being able to take a moment and say, there are these things in our lives that we're grateful for, all these little moments that we woke up in the morning and our soul was returned to us, that we as the Jewish people still exist. We need to express gratitude for those moments because those moments haven't left us. Even as there is so much that isn't right in the world, there are still these moments of rightness. And it's incumbent upon us to take advantage of all of those moments by expressing gratitude. My prayer for all of us is that we can have many, many more moments of gratitude in the next weeks, months, years to come.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.